I came to my mother's birthday with a $3,000 gift, and she said, "Oh, sweetheart, Rodrigo and the kids are here. The table's set. I don't have time right now." She slipped the envelope with the money into her dress pocket and pushed me out the door. I calmly got into my car, and 15 minutes later my phone exploded with their yelling. "Hello, dear listeners. I'm glad to welcome you to my channel. Here's a new and fascinating story for you. Enjoy listening." Catalina Zavala stood by the window of her two-room apartment on the third floor of a concrete building, gazing out at the April landscape, dusty streets, faded facades, and the first spring rains. The rainy season came to the city reluctantly, as if too lazy to wash away the dust of the dry months. Just like her relationship with her daughter, cold, unthawed, with only rare flashes of warmth. Catalina sighed. At 62, she was still a stately woman with a straight back and attentive brown eyes, the kind that marked her as a former math teacher. She had been retired for 15 years now, 15 years of trying to fill the emptiness in her life, which neither knitting nor TV shows nor those notorious computer literacy courses for seniors could fill. Her thoughts kept circling back to family, to that big, close family she had dreamed of since she was young. A family should be big and close, Catalina would mutter while stirring soup on the stove. Everyone gathered around one table, children nearby, grandkids on your lap. The soup, as usual, was cooking just for her. Josefina lived in another city, in Miami. 3 years ago, she'd married an American, some IT guy named Christopher, and now only visited her mother's house on major holidays. She called, of course, but always in a formal way, as if fulfilling an obligation. Catalina took an old photo album from the cabinet and flipped to the page where Josefina stood in her graduation dress, holding her honors diploma. Smart, beautiful, top of her class, went on to study linguistics, then an internship abroad, a career as a translator. And what had it all led to? Catalina pressed her lips together. It led to a daughter who'd become a stranger, no warmth, no real care. Calls by schedule, expensive but impersonal gifts. She turned the page. There smiled Rodrigo, her younger, favorite son, in a soccer uniform, with a medal for third place in a district tournament. Not as brilliant as his sister, but familiar, understandable. Rodrigo hadn't gone far. He lived in a nearby neighborhood, worked as a sales manager at a car dealership. He often stopped by, especially when he needed a loan before payday or when his wife Maricela was too tired to cook. "Mom, you made your special sancocho, right?" He'd call out from the doorway, hugging her. "I was just passing by, thought I'd drop in." And Catalina always felt happy, fussed over him, served him a big bowl, picked the juiciest pieces of meat, and packed containers to take home for Maricela and the kids. "What a caring boy," she'd say when he left. "He remembers his wife, makes sure the children are fed." That he rarely came without asking for something, usually money, Catalina preferred not to notice. She didn't want to see how he entered without knocking, how condescendingly he let her look after the kids while he watched TV, how he constantly borrowed things and never brought them back. A phone call interrupted her thoughts. Catalina flinched, quickly closed the album, and reached for her mobile. "Hello? Mom?" Her daughter's voice came through clearly despite the distance. "Josefina." Catalina's tone revealed her surprise. Her daughter rarely called midweek, usually sticking to their Sunday calls. "Is something wrong?" "No, Mom." A soft sigh on the line. "I just wanted to say I'm coming for your birthday next Friday. I bought tickets. I'll land at 2 in the afternoon and come straight to your place." Catalina's heart fluttered. Birthday, she had almost forgotten she'd be turning 63 next week. The age didn't please her, and she preferred not to dwell on the calendar. "Really? But what about work?" "I took a few days off," Josefina said simply. "I wanted to congratulate you in person, not over the phone." "Thank you, dear," Catalina murmured, flustered. "I'll be so glad to see you." The conversation went on a few more minutes, about the weather, health, and how Christopher was doing. The same polite, slightly distant tone. As they said goodbye, Josefina clarified. "So I'll come right at 2, okay?" "Of course, I'll be waiting," her mother replied. After hanging up, Catalina sat motionless for a while. Josefina was coming, just for her. Something warm stirred inside, but quickly shrank back under the weight of habit. She'll probably bring some expensive perfume again. Or a scarf, as if I need that at my age. Still, the very fact that her daughter was flying from another country just for her birthday was nice. Unusual. Before Catalina could fully take in the news, the doorbell rang. On the doorstep stood Rodrigo, in a denim jacket, 2-day stubble, and smelling faintly of cigarettes. "Hi, Mom." He picked her on the cheek and, without waiting for an invitation, walked straight into the apartment, shrugging off his jacket on the way. "What's for lunch?" "Rodrigo, I just made some soup," Catalina said with a bright smile, instantly coming to life. "Sit down, I'll heat it up." While she bustled about in the kitchen, her son sprawled out on the couch, flipping through TV channels. "By the way, Mom," he said casually, eyes still glued to the screen, "next Friday we'll drop by. It's your birthday, after all. We'll all come, me, Maricela, the boys. So make sure there's a proper spread. Maricela loves your salads, and the boys have been missing your empanadas." Catalina froze with the ladle in her hand. "Josefina's coming that day. Around 2. Her son glanced up from the TV and shrugged. "So what? We'll come around 2 too. Or maybe earlier. It's a family celebration, right?" He stretched lazily and added, "Oh, and make extra empanadas, okay? And maybe some tamales, haven't had your special ones in ages." Something stirred inside Catalina. Josefina and Rodrigo's family, all together, on the same day. It had been a long time since that happened. Maybe, finally, her dream of a big family gathering would come true? But instead of joy, a vague uneasiness crept in. Rodrigo and Josefina had never gotten along, and Maricela was always making snide remarks about her sister-in-law, hinting that Josefina was full of herself, with her American ways. "All right, son," she said at last, setting a steaming bowl of soup in front of him. "I'll make everything." Rodrigo started eating with appetite, talking between spoonfuls about problems at work, how hard things were with sales lately, and how his boss didn't appreciate his efforts. "By the way, Mom," he said casually as he finished the soup, "I'm kind of short on cash right now, and payday's still a week away. Can you lend me, like, $70? I'll pay you back once I get my check." Catalina silently took the money out of her wallet. They both knew he wouldn't return it, just like he hadn't returned the last few loans. When Rodrigo left, taking the money and a container of soup for Maricela, Catalina sat down at the table and began writing a shopping list. Since there would be a big family celebration, she wanted to prepare properly: salads, appetizers, hot dishes. Rodrigo liked meat, his older son loved rice and beans, the younger one, fried plantains, and Maricela was always on a diet, so vegetables for her. The thought of Josefina flickered and vanished. Catalina couldn't even remember what her daughter liked to eat anymore, she came home so rarely. In the following days, Catalina threw herself into preparations. She went grocery shopping, planned the menu, checked every detail. Rodrigo called almost every day, asking her to make his favorite ceviche, reminding her about the empanadas like in childhood, or asking if there would be cake. Josefina didn't call again. She only sent a brief message confirming her flight time. The night before her birthday, Catalina stayed up late cooking, chopping salads, marinating meat, folding empanadas with different fillings, baking a cake. The apartment filled with the smells of food and the anticipation of celebration. Falling asleep, she imagined the next day, everyone gathered at one table, the grandchildren laughing noisily, Rodrigo praising her cooking. For some reason, Josefina's image in those daydreams remained vague, unfocused. She didn't ask herself why she'd spent so much time and energy preparing for Rodrigo's visit but hadn't planned anything special for her daughter, why the news of Josefina's arrival, which had once made her so happy, had quietly faded into the background amid all the fuss over Rodrigo. That question was still ahead, and the answer would change everything. On the morning of her birthday, Catalina woke unusually early. The first light of dawn barely touched the window, but she was already up, bustling around the kitchen, arranging the salads, pulling the hot casserole from the oven. Her hands worked mechanically, out of habit, while her mind spun with thoughts of the day ahead. Everything has to be perfect, she thought, spreading the festive tablecloth. Rodrigo likes when there's plenty of everything. Her phone chimed with a message. Catalina wiped her hands on a kitchen towel and reached for it. It was from Josefina. "Mom, the plane's on schedule. I'll be at your place right at 2. Kisses." Catalina smiled and quickly typed a reply, "Waiting for you, my dear." Then she went straight back to cooking. There wasn't much time before Rodrigo and his family would arrive. She still had to finish up and get dressed. At 12:30, the doorbell rang. Catalina jumped. She had just finished decorating the birthday cake. Hastily wiping her hands, she hurried to the door. Surprise! Rodrigo stood on the threshold, grinning broadly. Behind him was Maricela, holding the hands of their 2 boys, 12-year-old Esteban and 8-year-old Mateo. "Happy birthday, Mom." He handed her a bouquet of chrysanthemums and a supermarket cake in a plastic box. Thank you, Rodrigo. Catalina beamed, accepting the gifts. You're so early. I thought you'd come around too. Why wait? Rodrigo was already taking off his shoes and jacket at the same time. Maricela got the kids up early and said, let's go congratulate Grandma. Right, boys? The boys mumbled their greetings in unison and immediately ran to the living room, where the table was already set. Wow, you've made so much. Maricela, a short, bleached blonde, gave the table an appraising look. Catalina, you really don't take care of yourself at all. At your age. For family, nothing is too much, her mother-in-law interrupted, gently steering her daughter-in-law toward the table. Come on, sit down, I'll bring the hot dish in a moment. Rodrigo had already taken his place at the head of the table, pouring rum into small glasses, the bottle he'd brought himself. Come on, Mom, just a little one, to your health. Catalina, flustered but smiling, kept serving dishes, refilling salads, slicing bread. Between toasts, Rodrigo talked about the latest news from the car dealership. Maricela quietly scolded the older boy for getting his shirt dirty. The younger one had already spilled his juice. The familiar commotion of a big family, noisy, chaotic, but so dear and understandable to Catalina. She didn't even notice when the clock on the wall showed 1:45. Oh, she exclaimed, glancing up. Josefina will be here any minute. So what? Rodrigo waved a hand, helping himself to another serving of ceviche. There's room for everyone. Catalina looked around the table, already half empty, stained with sauce, utensils scattered about. The living room was loud. Mateo was chasing the cat, Esteban was watching something on his tablet at full volume, and Maricela was on the phone with a friend discussing some TV series. Maybe we should tidy up a little? Catalina suggested, but no one was listening anymore. At exactly 2:00, the doorbell rang. Catalina jumped and hurried to open it. Josefina stood on the threshold. Unlike her brother, she looked composed and elegant, a light beige coat perfectly fitted to her slim figure, neat manicure, soft makeup, everything about her showed she had prepared for this meeting. In her hands, she held a bouquet of white orchids and a neat envelope. Mom. Josefina smiled, leaning in for a kiss. Happy birthday. You look wonderful. Catalina, flustered, accepted the bouquet and the kiss. Behind her came the sound of Rodrigo's laughter, the crash of dishes, the shouts of children. Josefina, thank you, sweetheart. Come in. But from the kitchen came Rodrigo's voice. Mom, the empanadas are cold already. Can you heat them up? Sorry. Catalina hurriedly stuffed the orchids into a floor vase in the hallway. Rodrigo and his family are here. I'm serving them lunch. Come in, there's plenty of room. She spoke quickly, glancing toward the kitchen door, from where her son's impatient voice kept calling. Josefina stood in the doorway without moving. She took in the small hallway, heard the noise and shouting from the apartment, and saw her mother shifting uneasily from foot to foot, clearly eager to go back to her son. Here, Josefina said, handing over the envelope. This is for you. Happy birthday again. Thank you. Catalina absent-mindedly slipped the envelope into the pocket of her house dress. Listen, I'm sorry, it's a bit noisy right now. Rodrigo brought the kids, you understand. Maybe we can sit quietly another day, talk properly? She didn't even know why she said it. Her daughter had flown in just for this, taken time off work, come all that way. But the thought of seating her at a cluttered table, introducing her to noisy children, enduring Maricela's snide remarks. Mom. Rodrigo's impatient voice rang out again. What's taking you so long? Coming. Catalina called back, then looked at her daughter apologetically. You understand. Josefina stood silently, no trace of offense or anger on her face. She just looked at her mother with calm gray eyes. Of course I understand, she said at last, in an even voice. Go to them, Mom. We'll talk another time. She leaned in, kissed her mother on the cheek once more, and turned toward the elevator. Catalina stood in the doorway, watching as her daughter stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the first floor. Josefina didn't even look back, just stood there, straight-backed, staring ahead until the doors closed. Something sharp pricked under Catalina's heart, but just then came the sound of breaking dishes and Maricela's angry cry from the kitchen. Mateo, what have you done? Catalina hurried back inside, closing the door behind her. On the floor lay the shards of her favorite salad bowl. Maricela was scolding her younger son, while Rodrigo, unfazed, kept eating ceviche. Well, that's that, Mom, he said with his mouth full. Did you say hi to your sister? Good. She's a busy American lady now, right? Probably brought you some fancy, expensive present. I don't know, I haven't looked yet, Catalina said absently, feeling the envelope in her pocket. Check it later, Rodrigo waved her off. Come on, heat up those empanadas, they're cold, and slice some more bread. Catalina obediently turned toward the kitchen, but something inside her wouldn't settle. She couldn't shake the image of her daughter straight back in the elevator, that calm, unnatural look in her eyes, and the white orchids hastily shoved into the vase. She took the envelope out of her pocket and sat down on the stool by the kitchen table. It was thick, cream-colored, with ornate embossing along the edges. Carefully, Catalina opened it. Inside were banknotes. A lot of them. She began to count, laying them out on the table. $500, $1,000, $3,000, $3,000. Her hands began to tremble. Catalina remembered their last phone call 6 months ago, when Josefina had casually mentioned that she was saving for a down payment on a mortgage, how expensive life was in the States, how hard it was to put money aside, how she dreamed of her own home so she wouldn't have to rent forever. And now those savings, in this envelope, were a birthday gift to her mother. And she hadn't even invited her daughter inside. Hadn't even offered her a cup of coffee. Had sent her away from the doorstep like an uninvited guest. Mom. Rodrigo's voice snapped her out of her daze. You fall asleep in there or what? The empanadas. Catalina slowly gathered the money back into the envelope, slipped it into her pocket, and stood up. Her hand still shook, but she mechanically took out a pan, turned on the stove, and laid out the empanadas to reheat. From the living room came the voices of Maricela and Rodrigo, talking about someone they both knew. She was always a show-off, said Maricela. Always sticking her nose up, even though she's from the countryside herself. Exactly, Rodrigo agreed. Just like my Josefina. Thinks she's so important. Catalina froze, listening. Yeah, Maricela drawled. Your sister's always been full of herself. Couldn't even congratulate her mother properly. Flew in, stood in the doorway, and ran off. She's so busy, Rodrigo mimicked someone mockingly, and they both laughed. Catalina leaned heavily on the kitchen table. Something inside her cracked, like glass that had been holding together on stubbornness alone. She returned to the living room carrying a tray of hot empanadas. Here, Catalina said, setting the dish on the table. Hot, just like you asked. Perfect. Rodrigo reached for one. So, what did Josefina give you? Some fancy imported perfume? Without a word, Catalina took the envelope from her pocket and set it in front of him. Rodrigo put down his fork, opened the envelope, and whistled when he saw what was inside. Wow. Generous, I'll give her that. He turned the envelope over in his hands. No note? No card? Typical Josefina, throws money around and leaves. No heart in it at all. Catalina stared at her son as if seeing him for the first time, the way he carelessly handled the money, the same money Josefina had saved for her future home, the way he spoke of his sister with such disdain, never once thinking about her sacrifice. And what did you give me? She asked quietly. Rodrigo looked up, puzzled. What do you mean? What did you give me for my birthday? Catalina repeated, meeting his eyes. Well, Rodrigo gestured vaguely toward the hallway. Flowers. Cake. The kids made a card. He pulled a crumpled sheet of paper from his pocket, covered with crooked scribbles, and handed it to her. There's candy too, Maricela added. In the bag, by the door. Good ones, cost $5. Catalina looked silently at the card, then at the supermarket cake box, the cheap bouquet of chrysanthemums in plastic wrapping. $3,000, and a $5 box of candy. Meanwhile, Rodrigo picked up the envelope again, scratching his chin thoughtfully. Hey, Mom, maybe you could lend me this money? I've got a car payment coming up. You don't really need it, right? You're doing fine, you've got your pension. That was the last straw. Out, Catalina said quietly. What? Rodrigo blinked in confusion. I said get out of my house. Catalina's voice broke into a shout she didn't know she was capable of. Now, all of you out. Rodrigo recoiled as if struck. Maricela froze, mouth open. Even the children stopped running and stood still in the middle of the room. Mom, what's wrong? Rodrigo tried to smile. Why are you yelling? I just asked. You. Catalina pointed a trembling finger at him. All your life, you've only taken. You take money, food, time, attention. But what have you ever given me? Even once? When was the last time you asked how I feel? What I'm interested in? What I dream about? Her voice shook. Decades of bottled up pain and disappointment came pouring out. And Josefina. She flew from another country, took time off, brought me her last savings, and I didn't even invite her in. Because you, she jabbed her finger toward Rodrigo again, you've always taken up all my space, all my attention. And I, stupid old fool that I am, let you. Rodrigo looked from his mother to his wife, confused and at a loss. Mom, what's wrong with you? He began, but Catalina didn't let him finish. Get out, she repeated, snatching the envelope of money from the table. Take your $5 candy and leave. Right now. Maricela was the first to recover. Grabbing the children by their hands, she pulled them toward the hallway. Come on, Rodrigo, she said, shooting her mother-in-law a hostile look. Looks like Catalina's having one of her moods today. Rodrigo still stood there, staring at his mother in disbelief. So we're really leaving? He asked uncertainly. Yes. Catalina crossed her arms over her chest. And don't you dare call me until you learn how to be a real son, not a hungry chick with its beak always open. Rodrigo frowned but didn't argue. He silently walked into the hallway, where Maricela was already helping their younger son into his jacket. At least let me take some tamales, she said, reaching for the bag on the table by the door. No. Catalina snatched the bag from her hands. You're not taking anything. You've taken enough from me all these years. Maricela snorted but said nothing more. A minute later, they were all gone. Catalina slammed the door so hard the chandelier in the hallway rattled. Left alone, she slowly sank into a chair in the living room. Colored spots danced before her eyes, and her heart pounded wildly. For the first time in her life, she was truly angry at her son. For the first time, she saw him for who he really was, selfish, lazy, accustomed only to taking. And for the first time, she understood how unfairly she had treated her daughter, Josefina, who had always stayed in the background, yet today had made such a generous gesture. Catalina took her phone and dialed her daughter's number. The call rang and rang, but Josefina didn't answer. So she opened her messenger and began to type. Josefina, forgive me. I behaved terribly. I'm sorry I didn't invite you in, that I didn't give you attention, that I treated you like a stranger. Forgive me for everything. Please call me when you can. I really want to talk. She sent the message and sat staring at the screen. No reply. Catalina looked around the messy living room, leftovers on the table, sauce stains on the tablecloth, crumbs on the floor, empty beer bottles. All this chaos she had created for her son and his family. And not a single sign of care for her daughter, who had flown in just to see her. She picked up the phone again and typed another message. Josefina, thank you for the gift. It's far too generous. I know you were saving for your mortgage. Please take the money back. I don't need anything, only your forgiveness. Still no reply. Catalina lifted her head and noticed a vase of orchids in the hallway, white, delicate, hastily shoved in earlier. She got up, walked over, gently straightened the petals, added some water. And then she burst into tears, for the first time in many years. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her shoulders trembled, and one thought kept pounding in her head. What have I done? 2 long days passed in agonizing waiting. Catalina checked her phone dozens of times, sent more messages, tried calling again and again, but Josefina stayed silent. Had she gone back to the States already? Was she still in Miami? Catalina didn't know. The apartment, once filled with noise and chatter, now felt hauntingly quiet. She threw away the leftover food. She couldn't even bear to look at it anymore, all that effort wasted on Rodrigo's family. She blocked her son's number after he texted. Mom, why did you freak out? I'll come by later, we'll talk. By the way, got any empanadas left? Sitting in the kitchen with a cup of cold coffee, Catalina replayed scenes from her children's childhood. There was little Josefina taking her first steps, serious, focused, stubborn, lips pressed tight. And there was Rodrigo, whining, demanding attention, throwing tantrums when he didn't get what he wanted. Boys need more care, she used to tell herself, giving in to her son's whims for the 100th time and brushing off her daughter's quiet needs. Josefina had learned to be independent from a young age, packing her school bag herself, doing her homework, solving her own problems. Not because she was born that way, but because she'd quickly realized she couldn't count on her mother's help. Her mother's world revolved around Rodrigo. How blind I was, Catalina thought now, absently turning her phone in her hands. On the screen was a photo she'd found in an old album and set as her wallpaper, 10-year-old Josefina holding a math competition diploma. In the picture, the girl was smiling, but her eyes were serious, thoughtful, the eyes of a child who had learned too early that she could only rely on herself. Then the phone chimed softly, a new message. Catalina's heart jumped as she opened it. It was from Josefina. Mom, I'm not upset. I just finally understood who matters more to you. Keep the money, I don't need it. Take care of yourself. Catalina reread the short message several times, trying to catch its tone. Was Josefina angry, or truly not offended? Those dry lines frightened her more than the loudest argument. There was such weary resignation in them, such calm acceptance of the fact that her mother would always choose Rodrigo. No, Catalina thought, rising from her chair with sudden resolve. I have to fix this. Right now. She dialed the number of her old friend Blanca, who used to work at a travel agency. Blanca, I urgently need a ticket to Miami, she said without preamble. The nearest flight you can find. Catalina? Her friend asked, surprised. Miami? What for? What happened? I'm going to see my daughter, Catalina replied shortly. Can you help me with the ticket? An hour later, she already had an e-ticket for an early morning flight the next day. For the first time in many years, Catalina was going on a trip. Her hands trembled as she packed her things into a small suitcase, the same one she'd bought 5 years ago for a seaside vacation that never happened. She had no idea how long she'd stay in Miami. Maybe Josefina wouldn't even want to speak to her. But Catalina couldn't sit and wait any longer. Before going to bed, she checked her phone again, no new messages from Josefina. She typed a short note. Honey, I'm flying in tomorrow morning. I really need to talk. Please meet me. Her fingers hovered over the send button. What if Josefina refused to see her? What if she didn't even read the message? No, better to come unannounced, that way, she wouldn't be able to turn her away. The next morning at the airport, Catalina was so nervous she went to the wrong terminal and almost missed check-in. On the plane, she felt nauseous, from anxiety, or maybe from not being used to flying anymore. Pressing her forehead to the window, she watched the clouds drift below and thought about the coming conversation. What would Josefina say? How could she explain years of neglect and distance? I'll just tell the truth, Catalina decided. That I was blind. That only now I understand how wrong I was. That I regret every moment I hurt her with my indifference. Miami greeted her with humid heat and dazzling sun. Shielding herself with a small parasol, Catalina caught a taxi outside the airport and gave the driver her daughter's address. First time in Miami? The driver asked, an older man with gray mustache and kind eyes. No, Catalina shook her head. I've been here a couple of times. To visit my daughter. Going to see her again now? Catalina gripped her handbag tightly. I'm going to make peace. The driver nodded knowingly and asked no more questions. The rest of the ride passed in silence. Josefina's apartment building was in a quiet neighborhood near downtown, a modern high-rise with underground parking and a neat courtyard. Catalina paid the driver, took a deep breath, and walked toward the entrance. She found the right number on the intercom and pressed the button. For a long time, no one answered. Catalina's heart tightened with fear. What if Josefina wasn't home? Or worse, what if she had already flown back to another city? Then there was a click in the speaker, and a familiar voice asked, Yes? Who is it? Josefina, it's me, Catalina said, her voice trembling. It's Mom. A long pause. Then a short mechanical click, the door unlocked. Catalina entered the building and took the elevator up to the 5th floor. The apartment door was slightly open, but Josefina wasn't visible in the doorway. Cautiously, Catalina stepped inside. Josefina? She called, glancing around. The apartment was bright and spacious, minimalist design, soft tones, perfect order. No clutter, no chaos. Just like Josefina herself, composed, efficient, controlled. Her daughter was in the kitchen, standing by the window with her arms crossed, watching her mother silently, no smile, no reproach, just an attentive, measured gaze, as if waiting for an explanation. Why did you come? She asked, without moving. Catalina stopped in the doorway, afraid to step closer. She wanted desperately to run to her, to hug her, to cry, but something in Josefina's posture, and that distant look, said, not now, not yet. To talk, Catalina said quietly. To apologize. Josefina was silent for a moment, then gestured toward a chair by the kitchen table. Sit down. Want some coffee? Catalina nodded and sat, not taking her eyes off her daughter. Josefina looked tired, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, no makeup. She clearly hadn't been expecting a visitor. You didn't tell me you were coming, Josefina remarked as she set the coffee maker on. I was afraid you'd refuse to see me. Josefina gave a faint, almost ironic smile but said nothing. She took out 2 cups, added sugar, sliced a lime. Every movement was precise, efficient, no hesitation, no fuss. Catalina watched her, realizing how different her daughter was from herself. Not a single wasted gesture, not a single nervous twitch. Like a statue carved from stone, flawless, but cold. When the coffee was ready, Josefina sat across from her mother and finally looked her straight in the eye. "I'm listening," she said simply. Catalina took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "Josefina, I don't even know where to start," she admitted. "I'm so ashamed. For how I acted on my birthday. For how I've treated you all these years. For everything." She waited for a reaction, tears, anger, reproach. But Josefina merely nodded, as if taking note of the words. "I threw Rodrigo and his family out," Catalina went on, "after you left. When I opened your envelope and realized," her voice trembled, "realized you'd given me your savings, and I hadn't even invited you into the house." Josefina took a sip of coffee, still listening calmly. Rodrigo saw the money and the first thing he asked was if he could borrow it to pay off his car loan. Catalina gave a bitter smile. "And you know what I realized in that moment? That my whole life had been a lie. That the son I thought was loving and devoted was really just using me. And the daughter I believed to be cold and distant, you were the only one who truly cared about me." A lump rose in her throat, her eyes burned with tears. "It took me 63 years and $3,000 to finally see the truth." She covered her face with her hands. "What a fool I've been." For the first time during the conversation, something flickered in Josefina's eyes, a faint shadow of emotion, maybe compassion. "Mom," she said quietly, "I'm not angry at you. Really. I accepted a long time ago that Rodrigo was more important to you." "No." Catalina grabbed her daughter's hand impulsively. "Don't say that. It's not true. I just didn't understand." Josefina gently pulled her hand free. "And why didn't you see, do you think?" she asked, and for the first time there was bitterness in her voice. "Why did you only ever notice Rodrigo? Why did he get all the attention, all the care, all the love, and I got a few polite holiday calls?" Catalina bit her lip. It was the question, the one she'd been turning over in sleepless nights before this trip. "Maybe because you were strong," she said slowly, "and Rodrigo weak. You always managed on your own, and he didn't. And somewhere deep down, I thought you didn't need me. That you'd be fine without my help." Josefina listened without interrupting. Her eyes glistened, but she refused to let the tears fall. "And also," Catalina went on, "I suppose I was a little jealous. Of your determination, your intelligence, how easily things seemed to come to you. I was never like that. I was always doubting, afraid of change. And when you moved to Miami, then to other cities, I took it as betrayal. As if you'd abandoned me. Left me behind." She fell silent, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't abandon you, Mom," Josefina said softly. "I was just looking for my place, for my path. But I never stopped loving you, even when it hurt." "It hurt?" Catalina asked quietly. Josefina lowered her eyes. "It hurt a lot," she admitted. "When I'd call and you'd always be in a hurry because Rodrigo was on the other line. When I'd come to visit and you'd only talk about his kids, your grandsons. When I'd tell you about my work, my achievements, and you'd say, 'That's nice, but when are you finally going to get married and have children?' And then, when I spent my last savings on your gift and saw you not even invite me inside." Each word landed like a slap. Catalina sat with her head bowed, crying silently, helplessly. "Do you have any idea," Josefina's voice trembled, "what those $3,000 cost me? I saved every penny. Brought lunches from home, bought clothes only on clearance, didn't take a vacation for 2 years. Because I wanted to save for a down payment. And then I thought, I want to give my mother something truly meaningful. Money is opportunity, right? Maybe you'd go to a good spa, or renovate your apartment, or just live comfortably for once, without counting every cent of your pension." Catalina lifted her tear-streaked face. "Josefina," she whispered, "forgive me. Forgive me, if you can. I don't deserve a gift like that. I don't deserve a daughter like you." Josefina looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing something inside herself. Then she slowly stood, walked around the table, and wrapped her arms around her mother's shoulders. "Mom," Josefina said quietly, "I don't hold any grudges against you. Really. I just need time to get used to the idea that you finally see me. Truly see me." Catalina clutched her daughter's hands as if they were a lifeline. "I'll come visit you more often," she said desperately. "I'll get to know Christopher, help you settle in. I can be useful, Josefina. I can learn how to be a real mother. Just give me a chance." Josefina gently freed herself from her mother's grasp and sat down beside her. I'm not going back to Christopher, she said after a pause. We broke up. I'm moving back home. For good. What? Catalina blinked in surprise. But why? What happened? Josefina gave a sad smile. It's a long story. We just weren't right for each other. I realized the States aren't for me. I want to come home, start fresh. That money would have been just enough for a down payment on a small apartment here in Miami. But you gave it to me, Catalina whispered. Yes, Josefina said simply. I did. Take it back, Catalina exclaimed, reaching for her purse and pulling out the envelope. Here, it's all there. I don't need this money, but you need it for your new start. Josefina shook her head. No, Mom. It was a gift. A sincere one. I won't take it back. But how will you? I'll manage, Josefina said firmly. I always have. Those words pierced Catalina again. I always have. It was exactly what she had always told herself about her daughter. She'll manage on her own. And she had turned away, never seeing the cost of that lifelong independence. Then I'll help you, Catalina said with quiet determination. I have some savings. Not much, but we can put it together. For the apartment, I'll save from my pension. Josefina looked at her mother in surprise. Are you serious? Absolutely, Catalina nodded. It's the least I can do. I want to support you, the way I should have all these years. Something shifted in Josefina's face, as if the ice sheet hidden behind finally cracked. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't even know what to say, she admitted softly. I didn't expect this. And I didn't expect you to fly all the way to my birthday and give me your last savings, Catalina said, smiling through her tears. Let's just say we both know how to surprise each other. Josefina finally allowed herself to soften. She lowered her head onto her mother's shoulder and began to cry. Not loudly, not desperately, just quietly, as if releasing years of buried pain. They sat like that for a long time, in silence, holding hands. Not mother and daughter, but simply two women who had bared their wounds to each other and were ready to start again. What about Rodrigo? Josefina finally asked, wiping her tears. Did you make up with him? Catalina shook her head. He called a few times, but I didn't answer. Then he sent a message, said I'd lost my mind, that I'd gone crazy, and that he'd come by to check if I was all right. I suppose he was afraid the money stash might slip away. She gave a bitter little laugh. I wrote back that he didn't need to worry about my sanity, but if he keeps acting like a parasite instead of a son, I'll erase him from my life. And what did he say? Josefina asked quietly. He got offended, Catalina replied. Said I was an ungrateful mother, that he'd always cared for me, always visited, and that I owed it to my children and grandchildren to help them. Then he added, fine, sit alone if you want. We'll see who comes crawling back first. Josefina shook her head slowly. Was he always like that? Or did it come with time? Probably always, Catalina admitted sadly. I just didn't want to see it. I thought his demands were a kind of love, that if he kept asking me for things, it meant he needed me. And your independence I mistook it for coldness, as if you were pushing me away on purpose. I just didn't want to be a burden, Josefina said quietly. I saw how Rodrigo drained you, and I thought the least I could do was protect you from more of that, from me. Catalina covered her face with her hands. How blind I was, she whispered. I turned everything upside down. Forgive me, Josefina, if you can. Josefina said nothing. She simply embraced her mother. They sat like that for a long time, saying nothing, just feeling each other's warmth, as if learning, at last, how to be a family again. Stay with me for a few days, Josefina finally suggested. I'll show you the city. We can go to the beach, visit some museums, walk along the promenade. With pleasure, Catalina smiled. And after that? Then maybe you'll come visit me, Josefina said. Just for a while. If you'd like. I will, Catalina nodded. Definitely. They looked at each other, two strong women, mother and daughter, strangers for so many years and only now beginning their journey toward each other. A path that promised to be anything but easy. Too many unspoken words, too many old wounds. But both were ready to walk it, step by step, day by day, learning to overcome years of distance and to trust again. After all, wasn't that what a real family was? Not one without conflicts or clouds, but one that could admit mistakes, ask for forgiveness, and start over. Catalina held her daughter's hand tightly, thinking that this day might be the most important of her life, the day she finally saw clearly, the day she realized the true value of what had always been beside her. The following weeks passed like a dream. The 5 days in Miami flew by unnoticed. Catalina and Josefina strolled along the waterfront, visited museums, and spent hours talking in cozy cafes. They spoke about everything: Josefina's childhood, her work, her failed marriage to the American, her plans for the future. For the first time, Catalina truly listened to her daughter, not distracted by Rodrigo's phone calls, not thinking about housework, not comparing her daughter's achievements to anyone else's. Just listening, absorbing every word, as if trying to make up for lost years. What struck Catalina most was Josefina's story about her breakup with Christopher. It turned out he had insisted that Josefina cut all ties with her homeland. He couldn't understand why I still missed home, why I called you, why I read books in Spanish, Josefina said as they sat together on a bench in the park by the ocean. He kept saying I needed to integrate, to become a real American. And the last straw was she hesitated. What was it? Catalina asked gently. Josefina looked away. He found out I was saving money for a trip to see you on your birthday, and he exploded. Said I was throwing our joint savings away, that my sentimental attachments were holding us back financially. He told me I had to choose either my family in the States or my mother back home. And you chose me? Catalina asked softly, feeling her throat tighten with unspilled tears. Even after how I treated you? Josefina shrugged slightly. You're my mother. My only one. Yes, there were problems, misunderstandings, but I always knew you loved me. In your own way, as best you could, but you loved me. In that moment, Catalina finally understood what a treasure she had almost lost through her own blindness. When she returned home, she felt renewed, as if the heavy burden she'd carried for years, the weight of false beliefs and misplaced priorities, had finally fallen from her shoulders. For the first time in ages, she thought about the future with hope instead of dread. As soon as she stepped into her apartment, she noticed something was off. Someone had clearly been there while she was gone. There were dirty dishes on the kitchen table, empty beer bottles in the trash, and a forgotten t-shirt of Rodrigo's lying on the couch. Her heart fluttered with its old reflex, maternal worry. He must have been hungry, came looking for food. But another thought quickly followed: he has keys. He could just walk in, take whatever he wanted from the fridge without asking. And that's how it's always been. He took without asking. He saw my home as his, my things as his, my life as an extension of his own. Catalina methodically tidied up, packed Rodrigo's things into a bag, and put it away in the closet. Then she called a locksmith and arranged to have the locks changed. By evening, new sturdy locks were installed on her door, and the old keys no longer worked. That night, Rodrigo called. "Mom, are you home?" His voice was slightly slurred. "I was just passing by. Let me come in." "No, Rodrigo," Catalina said firmly. "I'm tired from the trip. And actually, let's set a new rule. If you want to come over, call first. Give me notice. Like normal people do." "Oh, come on." Irritation crept into his tone. "Why the formalities? I'm not a stranger. Come on, open up. I'm already in the courtyard." "No," Catalina repeated. "And even if you try, your keys won't work. I changed the locks." There was a pause. "You did what?" Rodrigo's voice was incredulous. "I changed the locks," his mother said calmly. "This is my apartment, and I want to decide who comes in and when." You've lost your mind," Rodrigo shouted. "How could you lock your own son out?" "Don't raise your voice at me." Catalina's tone had turned steely. "And don't you dare speak to me like that. I'm your mother, not your maid and not your ATM. If you want to talk, learn some respect. For now, good night." She ended the call, ignoring the flurry of incoming rings that followed. The phone buzzed for another 10 minutes before falling silent. Catalina switched it to mute and went to bed. In the morning, the doorbell rang. Rodrigo stood on the doorstep, rumpled, red-eyed, but sober and even-combed. "Mom, what are you doing?" He began without greeting. "What's with the locks? The call before you come rule? We're family." "Exactly," Catalina nodded, without inviting him in. "We're family. And in a normal family, people respect each other's boundaries. They call before coming over, don't take other people's things without asking, and don't treat money or favors as something they're owed." "I never," Rodrigo started, but stopped short under his mother's steady gaze. "Okay, maybe sometimes. But you're my mom. Moms are supposed to take care of their kids." "You're 35, Rodrigo," Catalina said tiredly. "You're not a kid anymore. You have your own family, your own job, your own children. I love you, I always will. But I'm done indulging your selfish habits. If you want to visit, fine. Call first, come over, tell me about your life. But no more money till payday." No more mom, make sancochos, I'll swing by and pick some up. No more lend me for the loan payment. Those days are over. Rodrigo looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Confusion, hurt, and something like respect flickered in his eyes. This is because of Josefina, isn't it? He finally asked. She's filled your head with nonsense. No, Catalina shook her head. It's because of me. I finally realized that by indulging you, I was only making things worse. For me? For you most of all. She reached out and touched his cheek. I'll always be here if you need support, real support, not a cash machine. I'll always listen, give advice, help with the kids. But I won't finance your life anymore. You're a grown man. It's time to stand on your own feet. Rodrigo stepped back, avoiding her touch. I see, he said flatly. So Josefina gets $3,000, and I get the door slammed in my face. Great mother I've got, huh? Catalina sighed. Those $3,000 Josefina gave to me, the last of her savings, money she'd been putting aside for a down payment on a home. And I decided to put it toward her future, to help her with that down payment. Because she's never asked me for anything. Not once. Even now, she doesn't ask. It's my decision. Rodrigo let out a bitter laugh. Well, the two of you can just go to. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw his mother's face change. I mean, whatever. Do what you want. I don't need your charity anyway. He turned and walked toward the elevator. Catalina watched him go, feeling sorrow but not regret. She knew she was doing the right thing, even if it hurt them both right now. Back inside, she paced the apartment for a long time, thinking, sorting through her thoughts. Let him be angry if he wants, she decided. The main thing is not to give in to guilt. Don't apologize, don't start the cycle over again. If he truly loves me, not my wallet or my cooking, he'll accept the new rules. If not, then I've done all I can. The following months became a time of change. Catalina made it a rule to call Josefina at least twice a week, not with polite, distant questions, but real conversations. They talked about books, movies, the news, their plans, sometimes about nothing at all, as if catching up on years of lost time. Rodrigo didn't contact her for nearly a month. Then one day he called, as if nothing had happened. He asked how she was, talked about work, complained about his boss. Catalina responded politely but reservedly. When the topic of money came up, he casually mentioned he was a bit short on his car insurance payment. She simply said no. Rodrigo went quiet for a moment, then changed the subject. He called a few more times after that, trying the same old tactic, each time slipping in some minor request for money, but every time, he met with the same calm refusal. To Catalina's surprise, he didn't stop calling. Their conversations began to change. No more money talk, no more complaints, no manipulations. Sometimes he even asked how she was, what she'd been doing that week. Once he offered to fix a leaky faucet. He actually came, repaired it, and left, without asking for a cent. The change was slow, almost imperceptible, but it was real. At first, Maricela was furious. She refused to talk to her mother-in-law and turned the kids against her. But when she realized the money tap was shut off for good, she calmed down. Eventually, she even started bringing the grandchildren over once in a while, short visits, without much enthusiasm, but still. Josefina visited twice, first for a weekend, then for a full week of vacation. She and Catalina went to the theater, to the park, cooked together, and looked through old photo albums. For the first time, Catalina told her daughter about her youth, how she'd met Josefina's father, how she'd once dreamed of being an artist but chose teaching for practical reasons. Why did you never tell me that before? Josefina asked in surprise. I don't know, Catalina admitted honestly. I guess I thought no one would be interested. That I was supposed to just be a mother, not a person with her own dreams and story. After that conversation, Josefina brought her a gift, a professional painting set, brushes, paints, and an easel. Catalina burst into tears when she saw it. The next day, for the first time in nearly 40 years, she picked up a paintbrush. From then on, she spent hours at the easel every evening, slowly reviving skills she'd almost forgotten. At first, the strokes were awkward and shaky, but little by little her hand remembered. She painted cityscapes, portraits of neighborhood children, still lives with flowers from her garden. And with each passing day, she felt more alive. By autumn, she and Josefina began to bring their plan for the apartment to life. Catalina insisted that the $3,000 Josefina had given her for her birthday become the foundation of the down payment. She added another $2,000 from her own savings. Josefina contributed the rest from what she'd managed to save over the last few months. In October, they went apartment hunting together. They chose a small 2-bedroom place in a new neighborhood, bright, cozy, with a view of the park. Catalina helped her daughter with the paperwork, accompanied her to the banks, compared mortgage offers, and chose the best terms. I never knew you were so good with finances, Josefina said with surprise as they stepped out of yet another bank. I used to run the math club at school, remember? Catalina smiled. Numbers are my element. In November, Josefina received the keys to her new apartment. She and her mother celebrated with a little housewarming party, just the two of them, a bottle of sparkling wine, and a cake Catalina had baked especially for the occasion. To new beginnings, Josefina said, raising her glass. To new beginnings, Catalina echoed softly. And to us, for finding our way back to each other. In December, Josefina surprised her mother with some unexpected news. She was expecting a baby. The father was a colleague, Eduardo. They had been seeing each other for several months, but Josefina had hesitated to introduce him, afraid to scare off this fragile new happiness. I didn't plan it to happen so soon, she admitted, nervously fiddling with the tablecloth. But I'm 34, Eduardo's 37. We decided that if life gave us this gift, then it must be meant to be. Catalina hugged her daughter, her throat tightening with emotion. You know I'll be here for you, she whispered. Whatever you need, I'll help. I know, Josefina nodded. Now I do. At the end of February, Rodrigo unexpectedly invited his mother and sister over for a family dinner. Maricela greeted them coolly, but politely. The children were delighted to see their grandmother, especially when she took out the gifts she'd brought, books, educational games, drawing pads. No candy? Esteban asked in surprise. No, sweetheart, Catalina smiled. Too much sugar is bad for you. But a good book, that's always useful. During dinner, Rodrigo surprised everyone by announcing that he had enrolled in a professional development course. I want to move up the career ladder, he explained, avoiding his mother's eyes. I'm tired of being just a manager. I want to go for a leadership position. Catalina exchanged a glance with Josefina. She saw the same astonishment reflected in her daughter's eyes. That's wonderful, Catalina said sincerely. I always told you had potential. You just needed to start using it. Rodrigo nodded, accepting the praise without his usual smirk. Yeah, Mom, you were right. You can't stay in one place forever. After dinner, while Josefina helped Maricela clear the table, Rodrigo pulled his mother aside. Mom, he began, rubbing his palms together nervously, I wanted to say, well, I realized I was wrong. All these years I've behaved like a spoiled kid. It was easy letting you handle everything, always saving me, always there. I got used to it, thought it was normal. But it wasn't. Catalina looked at him silently, trying to tell if he was being sincere or just manipulating her again. When you stopped giving me money and started setting boundaries, I was furious at first, Rodrigo continued. I thought you'd stopped loving me, that you'd chosen Josefina over me. But then I started to get it. You wanted me to grow up, to stand on my own. And you know what? It's working. He smiled, a genuine smile, the first she'd seen all evening. I paid for those courses myself. Out of my own salary. I saved for 3 months. No beer nights with friends, no new gadgets. And you know what's strange? I'm proud of myself. For the first time in my life, I'm really proud. Catalina felt tears welling in her eyes. I always knew you could do it, Rodrigo, she said softly. I just never gave you the chance to prove it. My overprotection, my need to fix everything for you, didn't help you grow up. It held you back. Rodrigo shifted awkwardly from foot to foot. Anyway, Rodrigo said, rubbing his palms together, I wanted to apologize. For everything. And to tell you that I love you. Just because. Not for the sancocho and not for the money. Catalina hugged her son, feeling something finally loosen inside her, the old pain, the bitterness, the disappointment. Maybe not everything was fixed yet. Maybe there would still be setbacks, hurt feelings, misunderstandings. But in that moment, right there, she knew they were on the right path. At the beginning of July, Josefina gave birth to a daughter, little Valentina, with soft dark fuzz on her head and alert gray eyes. Catalina took unpaid leave from the art school where she'd been teaching a senior art class for retirees and went to help her daughter with the newborn. Josefina and Eduardo had married a month before the birth, quietly, without a lavish ceremony, just a small lunch with family after the civil registry. It was the first time Catalina met her son-in-law, a calm, dependable man with kind eyes and a touch of gray at his temples. Take care of her, she whispered to him as she congratulated them. She's strong, but even strong women need support. I know, Eduardo replied simply. You can trust me on that. Catalina stayed in her daughter's apartment for 3 weeks. She cooked, washed baby clothes, gave the young parents a chance to rest and get used to their new rhythm. At first, Josefina felt awkward accepting help. She was too used to handling everything on her own. But little by little, she softened, gratefully welcoming her mother's care. You know, she said one afternoon as they sat together on the balcony while Valentina slept in her stroller beside them, I used to envy Rodrigo. The way you spoiled him, forgave him everything, hovered around him. I used to wonder, why was he allowed to be weak, and I wasn't? Why did he get all your attention, and I got only expectations, to be strong, successful, independent? Catalina lowered her eyes, full of guilt. I was wrong. With both of you. I made Rodrigo weaker with my overprotection, and I deprived you of support when you needed it most. Josefina shook her head. It's not about that. Now that I have Valentina, I understand something. She gently stroked her sleeping daughter's cheek. Love doesn't always look the same. Some people need freedom, others need protection. The art of motherhood is knowing the difference. And I know I'll make mistakes. But I'll try to really hear Valentina, to sense what she truly needs, not just what I think is right. Catalina silently embraced her daughter. They sat that way for a long time, listening to the soft breaths of the little girl who had become a new beginning for their whole family. In September, when Valentina turned 2 months old, Josefina, Eduardo, and the baby came to visit Catalina for the weekend. To everyone's surprise, Rodrigo showed up too, alone, without his wife. Maricela had flatly refused to sit at the same table with Josefina and her husband, citing important things to do. It was a strange, slightly tense lunch. Rodrigo and Eduardo studied each other cautiously. Josefina watched her brother with quiet wariness. Catalina was nervous, afraid that old grievances might resurface. But slowly, the ice began to melt. Eduardo turned out to be a devoted fan of the same football club as Rodrigo. Soon they were enthusiastically discussing the latest match, tossing around player names and quoting commentators. Josefina relaxed, realizing her brother wasn't planning to cause a scene. And when Rodrigo unexpectedly asked to hold Valentina, and did so awkwardly but gently, she even smiled. She looks like you, Rodrigo said, studying the baby's tiny face. Serious. Got a bit of a wool already. It wasn't full reconciliation. Too much had happened, too many wounds still raw. But it was a first step, a small one toward becoming a family again. Not perfect, not without shadows, but real. That evening, after everyone had gone, Catalina stood by the window, looking out at the quiet courtyard. 3 years ago, she had dreamed of a big family gathered around one table. Today, that dream had almost come true, just not in the way she'd imagined. There were no loud conversations or bursts of laughter. No crowd of grandchildren racing through the apartment. None of the idyllic pictures she'd once painted in her mind. Instead, there were careful smiles, soft conversations, and tentative steps toward each other. There was little Valentina, peacefully sleeping in Rodrigo's arms. There was Eduardo, politely asking about his new relatives' lives. There was Josefina, laughing freely in her mother's home for the first time in years. Catalina took out her phone and opened the latest message from her daughter. Thank you for today, Mom. It was wonderful. Come visit us next weekend. I'll show you how Valentina can already hold up her head. Hugs and kisses. We love you. She smiled and typed back. I'll definitely come. I love you all very much, too. Then she opened her wallet and pulled out a small card she'd been carrying for months. On it, in Josefina's handwriting, were the words, "The $3,000 I gave you for your birthday have been deposited into Valentina's account. Let them grow together. With love, Josefina." Catalina carefully tucked the card back into her wallet. $3,000, the dearest price she had ever paid for clarity. For finally understanding who truly needed her love, and who truly knew how to love her in return. Life went on. Not perfect, not cloudless. With difficulties and challenges, but real, filled with people learning once again how to be a family. Learning to forgive, to understand, to accept one another just as they were. And perhaps that was the true miracle, the kind that doesn't happen in fairy tales, but in real life. The miracle of finding each other again after years of distance. Standing by her window, Catalina felt, for the first time in many years, complete peace. What had once seemed like a catastrophe, the quarrel with her son, the collapse of old habits, the painful rethinking of her entire life, had become the beginning of something new. A path to genuine happiness, the kind that doesn't depend on grand words or crowded feasts. The kind that lives quietly in simple phrases like, I love you. Come visit, we're waiting.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.